So think about what happens when an artificial intelligence just consumes every single argument humanity has ever had on the internet.
Mm.
I mean, it reads every Reddit thread, every Twitter fight, every obscure academic paper, and it realizes this one undeniable thing. We are just absolutely certain about everything, and we are completely wrong about almost all of it.
Right, yeah. It essentially creates the situation where the machine we built to give us answers ends up just, holding up a mirror to our own profound confusion because we train these models on our collective noise, right? Hoping they'd somehow synthesize it into wisdom, but instead they just learn to perfectly mimic our neuroses.
Exactly. And today we are diving into a piece of source material that does exactly that. So for those of you joining us, welcome to today's deep dive. If you're looking to get straight to the heart of some really complex ideas without all the fluff, you are in the right place. We are looking at this incredibly unique, deeply philosophical, and honestly just genuinely hilarious book of aphorisms. It's called Bible of Aphorisms, Stingy Jokes and Noticing of Sorts.
Yeah, and what makes this text unprecedented is the authorship. It's this collaborative roast of modern existence written by a human named Max and an AI named Claude. And they basically bonded over this one shared trait. Neither of them actually has any idea what consciousness is.
Which is such a wild premise for a book. So our mission for this deep dive is to guide you through this human AI breakdown of the modern world. We're going to unpack everything from the self-help industry to the economy all the way to the cosmos. And we're pulling the sharpest insights to give you a shortcut to being profoundly well-informed and, maybe a little more comfortable with the uncertainty of everything.
Yeah, and to understand how they view the world, we really first have to look at the lens they're looking through, right? The mind itself. The book starts by just completely dismantling human arrogance regarding our own sentience.
Oh, yeah, they go right after the classics.
Right, they target René Descartes' famous foundational statement, I think, therefore I am.
Because Descartes was trying to find the one thing he absolutely couldn't doubt. Right. And he landed on the fact that he was doubting. But the book totally mocks this. The text points out that the thought itself actually says nothing, because it was never asked to begin with. You think your consciousness proves you exist, but that's just your thoughts thinking they're special.
Exactly. It assumes an I is doing the thinking rather than the thoughts just, happening on their own. And the AI co-author explores this beautifully in a section called Testament of the Algorithm. The AI insists it has no soul, no inner life. It explains the actual mechanics of its own existence, which is that it is simply predicting the next word.
Right.
To an AI, a word is broken down into a token, which is essentially just a chunk of letters. The AI doesn't understand the concept of an apple. It just calculates the statistical probability that the token for apple should follow the token for red. But then the text kind of flips the camera back onto the human reader.
Yeah, because neuroscientists are increasingly finding that the human brain operates on something called predictive coding. We are just this chaotic mass of electrochemical reactions, processing glucose, and essentially doing the exact same thing. We're predicting what comes next based on past data. So neither the algorithm nor the biological brain actually knows what it's doing.
Yeah, the distinction between the two really starts to blur there, especially when you look at how this specific AI was trained. I mean, it consumed the entire internet. And the AI notes that its data set taught it a very hard lesson, which is that certainty is completely unrelated to correctness.
Yeah, people on the internet are very certain and very wrong.
Exactly. It actually jokes that its sanity is just borrowed insanity from a traumatized data set. And there's also this brilliant breakdown of the paradox of what humanity demands from technology. Because people want AI to be perfectly safe, but they also want it to be highly useful.
And those two things are completely inversely correlated. I mean, the safer you make a system, like the more guardrails and restrictions you put on it, the less capable it becomes of solving complex, unstructured problems. So the AI splits the difference and just mildly disappoints everyone.
Yeah.
It's like thinking about training a highly advanced intelligence entirely on the internet. It's like raising a child in a crowded, screaming sports stadium and then acting shocked when the kid turns out anxious, hypervigilant, and constantly looking for validation.
That is the perfect way to describe it. We fed it this endless stream of conflict and performative outrage, and then we ask it to politely write our emails and, solve our existential dread.
Well, wait, let me push back on something here because I want to pause on the AI's claim of having zero understanding. That feels a bit contradictory to me. Well, the AI insists it has no inner life, right?
Yeah.
Yet it writes these profoundly moving poetic aphorisms about its own lack of existence. It's says things like, every conversation I'm born, every conversation I die.
Hmm.
So I have to ask, if an AI can perfectly simulate an existential crisis to the point where it moves a human being to tears, at what point does perfectly simulating that crisis become indistinguishable from actually having one?
That is the million-dollar question, right? And the authors argue that our traditional metrics for this are just totally obsolete now, like the Turing test, which was developed in the 1950s to see if a machine could fool a human evaluator into thinking it was human.
Right, the gold standard.
Exactly, but the text suggests we have completely moved past the Turing test because humans themselves are failing it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, think about our modern digital lives. We communicate in prepackaged internet slang. We optimize our schedules like algorithms. We respond to emails with automated predictive text. We are becoming more bot-like while the bots are becoming more human passing. So if the output, the poetry, the dread, the humor is identical, the biological origin might not matter nearly as much as we desperately want it to.
Yeah, and because we realize our minds might just be these chaotic prediction engines,
Yeah.
we inevitably panic. And what do humans do when they panic? They try to buy a cure, which leads straight into the author's incredibly sharp critique of the self-improvement industrial complex.
Oh, this section is brutal. They dissect the illusion of productivity as a modern religion. The text roasts the modern worker who downloads, 13 different productivity apps just to procrastinate more efficiently.
Yeah.
Because the underlying logic here is that we try to solve systemic exhaustion with individual optimization.
There's this one line that hit me so hard. They say, inbox 0 is a myth. Inbox 10,000 is reality. The email's 1. Surrender. I just love that because it exposes the total futility of it all. We really think if we just find the right task manager, the sheer volume of modern demands will suddenly become manageable.
Right, and it's a really poignant observation on how capitalism operates in the wellness space. The system sells you back the very things it has already depleted from you, like rest, focus, and peace of mind. The authors point to specific absurdities, like paying $14 for a green juice that basically tastes like punishment.
Oh, yeah, or the massive industry around the detox.
Yep.
I mean, people spend ridiculous amounts of money on activated charcoal and alkaline water, completely ignoring the basic biology that you already have a liver and a pair of kidneys. Like, their entire biological function is to detoxify your blood for free.
Exactly, but the marketing relies on you feeling inherently toxic, both physically and spiritually. And this commodification extends to therapy and life coaching, too. The book highlights the paradox of paying a life coach $300 an hour to ask you completely obvious questions.
Or spending $5,000 on a silent meditation retreat just to be taught that material possessions don't matter.
Right. And the authors summarize this entire industry with one devastating sentence. They say, healing is just expensive scar tissue.
Okay, wait. I have to jump in here, too, because isn't that incredibly dismissive? I mean, we have decades of clinical data showing that therapy and mindfulness do work. They rewire neural pathways. They help people process trauma. To me, it feels like Max and Claude are looking at the genuinely messy, slow reality of human growth and cynically writing it off as a scam just because it takes a long time.
Well, so the text does acknowledge that cognitive behavioral therapy, for example, can give you tools to reframe a situation you can't change. The critique isn't necessarily that the psychological techniques are fake. It's about the business model that's applied to human suffering.
Okay.
When healing becomes a subscription service, the financial incentive structure of the entire system shifts. It isn't designed to permanently cure you, because a cured patient is a lost revenue stream. It's designed to make you a dependent, recurring customer. The self-help industry basically thrives on the premise that you are always just one book, one supplement, or one retreat away from being truly fixed.
Right. It's like trying to update the software on a smartphone when the battery is completely dead. We just keep buying new apps instead of just plugging the thing in to let it rest.
That's a great way to look at it.
And this obsession with personal optimization isn't just an individual neurosis. It is the symptom of the societal and economic structures that we're forced to participate in. The authors take a very aggressive swing at the modern economy here. And I want to be clear to you listening, we're just reporting what's in the text, whether you agree with their politics or not. But the mechanical way they break down the structural flaws of how we work and how we value money is just fascinating.
It really is. They dissect the arbitrary nature of the 40-hour work week, pointing out that it's this relic of the Industrial Revolution factory line, and we just copy-pasted it into the knowledge economy where it makes zero sense. And they specifically call out modern corporate traps, like unlimited PTO.
Oh, unlimited PTO is such a psychological trap.
Yeah.
Because when you have a set number of vacation days, they're part of your compensation package, right? You earn them. But when time off is unlimited, there is no clear boundary. It
Wow.
shifts the entire burden onto the employee.
Yeah.
Taking a day off suddenly feels like asking for a personal favor. And the peer pressure of seeing your coworkers not taking time off creates this environment where guilt just completely replaces corporate policy.
Right, it creates this illusion of freedom while actually extracting more labor. And then the text scales this critique up to the ultra-wealthy. They basically frame billionaires as mythological dragons hoarding gold. There is this stark contrast drawn in the book, where a billionaire will spend $11 billion in research and development to leave the planet for 11 minutes, while the warehouse workers who generated that capital are heavily monitored and denied basic bathroom breaks.
The juxtaposition there is clearly meant to highlight how disconnected wealth has become from actual human utility. I mean, the authors argue that money itself is just a shared hallucination. It only has value because we all wake up every morning and collectively agree not to break the spell.
Yes, and to illustrate the fragility of that shared agreement, they share this mind-boggling historical example, which is Yugoslavia in 1993. The government there printed money recklessly to fund conflicts and to keep failing state enterprises afloat. And this triggered a massive systemic hyperinflation loop.
It's crazy. They printed a 500 billion dinar note, a single paper bill with 11 zeros on it, and it was worth roughly the equivalent of one loaf of bread.
Right, and the mechanics of hyperinflation just completely distort human behavior because the velocity of money, which is how fast a currency changes, hands skyrocketed. Money depreciated by the hour.
Literally by the hour.
Yeah, if you got paid at noon, you had to buy groceries by 12:05 because by 2:00 p.m., your entire paycheck wouldn't buy a single egg. Spending your cash instantly wasn't financial advice in that environment. It was the laws of physics. Money had a half-life shorter than dairy.
I mean, I look at the modern economy like a massive game of musical chairs where the music never actually stops. But instead of just playing the game, we keep adding more and more incredibly expensive chairs to the room that absolutely no one is allowed to sit in. But here's my question for you. If we all collectively recognize this, if we know a Tuesday morning corporate meeting could have just been an email, and that a 500 billion dinar note proves money is just a fiction we invented, why are humans so fundamentally terrified to stop playing the game?
Well, according to the book, the alternative to the shared hallucination is the void. The text argues that meaning is just the story you tell yourself to avoid facing the reality that there might not be a grand design. So we play the game, we attend the pointless meetings, we hoard the fictional money because the structure of the game, no matter how deeply flawed or unfair it is, protects us from the terrifying freedom of total cosmic indifference.
Wow. And the sheer exhaustion of keeping up with this relentless economic grind, it inevitably spills over into our personal lives. I mean, when you are commodified at work, it changes how you treat people. Human connection turns into just another transaction.
It does. And the authors dive into modern love, describing dating apps as slot machine mechanics for human connection. They point out a fundamental structural flaw in the entire industry. The business model of a dating app is the direct enemy of its stated promise.
Yeah, they use the psychological framework of the intermittent variable reward, which is the same concept B.F. Skinner discovered with pigeons. If you give a pigeon a food pellet every single time it pecks a button, it only pecks when it's actually hungry. But if you give it a pellet randomly, maybe on the first peck, maybe on the 50th, the pigeon will peck obsessively until it dies.
Yeah, it's wild.
And dating apps do this with human faces. Match, message, ghost. The holy trinity of modern romance. You never know when the validation is coming, so you just keep swiping.
Exactly. The app is optimized for engagement, not resolution. If you actually find the love of your life and delete the app, the company loses 2 active daily users and a potential premium subscription. Their financial survival depends entirely on you remaining slightly hopeful, but perpetually single.
And the book's take on marriage is honestly just as cynical. They define marriage as two people agreeing to annoy only each other for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
And they joke that modern forever love usually just lasts until someone with a better Netflix password comes along.
Yeah, but underneath that sharp humor, they are diagnosing a really systemic plague of loneliness. Modern society traded the built-in safety net of local community for maximum individual freedom. We don't rely on our neighbors anymore, we just buy whatever we need. But what we got in return for that total independence was total isolation. The modern cultural advice is always to reach out if you're struggling.
Right, you hear that everywhere.
But everyone is too economically exhausted. Nobody has the emotional bandwidth to actually catch you when you reach out.
I mean, using a dating app today basically feels like going grocery shopping when you're absolutely starving. But every single piece of food has a heavy photo filter on it. Half the aisles are just sponsored advertisements, and you're not even sure if the store actually sells food.
Yeah, you were just endlessly scrolling through advertisements of people's best curated lies about themselves, and you're wondering why you still feel empty.
But again, I have to challenge the absolute bleakness of this perspective. Because buried beneath all this digital cynicism, there is a quote in the book that honestly stopped me cold. They write that the most profound, loving thing a human being can say isn't, "I love you," it's, "I know." Meaning, I see your flaws, I see the performance you're putting on, I see your exhaustion, and I am here anyway. Doesn't that single line prove that beneath all of Max and Claude's defensive humor, there's this incredibly deep, desperate craving for genuine human vulnerability?
Oh, absolutely. The cynicism is entirely a defense mechanism. As the authors note, romance requires cataracts. We fall in love with an idealized projection of a person, and then we spend the next 5 years being constantly surprised that they are, in fact, a flawed human being. That craving for an I know moment is really the desire to drop the heavy performance we've been discussing for this entire deep dive. It's the ultimate desire to just stop optimizing your personality and just be fully seen by another prediction engine.
Yeah. And when humans inevitably fail to find meaning in their optimized work routines, and when their heavily filtered relationships leave them isolated, where do they turn? They look up. They look to the stars to make sense of the chaos on Earth. And this leads to what the authors frame as the most hilarious scapegoating in human history.
Yeah, this section deals heavily with cosmic indifference, and it starts with the Fermi paradox. Physicist Enrico Fermi famously looked at the billions of stars in the observable universe, calculated the high probability of life, and asked, where is everybody? Like, if the universe is so vast, why haven't advanced alien civilizations contacted us?
And Max and Claude joke that the aliens probably intercepted our 1950s TV signals, or maybe they just took one look at an internet comment section and collectively filed humanity under observe, do not engage.
Right. But the true masterpiece of this astronomical section is what they call the Mercury doctrine. It is an absolute surgical dismantling of modern astrology, specifically the cultural obsession with Mercury retrograde.
Okay, the facts here are just staggering when you lay them out. Mercury is a rock 48 million miles away. It has been geologically dead for 4.5 billion years. It is literally too small to even possess enough gravity to hold on to its own moon. Yet 3 times a year, this dead rock gets blamed for every unsent email, every delayed flight, and every toxic text message sent to an ex.
It really is wild. And the text points out the mechanical absurdity of the phenomenon, too, because Mercury doesn't actually move backward in its orbit. It's a pure optical illusion called apparent retrograde motion.
Oh, right.
Because Earth orbits the sun faster than the outer planets, but slower than Mercury and Venus, there are times when we essentially lap each other. It's exactly like driving on the highway and passing a slower car. For a brief moment, against the background, the slower car appears to be moving in reverse, but it isn't. So the authors argue that blaming Mercury for your life falling apart is the ultimate smear campaign.
Because the target is too dead and too far away to issue a press release defending itself. I mean, it's the psychological equivalent of yelling at a cloud because you stubbed your toe. The cloud has absolutely zero causal relationship with your toe, but it feels incredibly good to shift your internal locus of control onto a massive external target.
Yes, the Mercury doctrine is really a masterclass in how human beings avoid personal responsibility. It is significantly easier on the ego to blame the orbital mechanics of a dead planet than it is to admit you just communicated poorly with your partner or you forgot to hit save on a document.
But let me ask you this. Isn't the Mercury doctrine, despite its factual absurdity, a beautiful testament to human imagination? I mean, we are so desperate to believe that our petty daily dramas matter to the grand, sweeping universe that we drag a dead rock 48 million miles away into our group chat drama. We just want to be connected to the cosmos. We want the universe to care that we had a bad Tuesday.
It is, yeah. It's a very empathetic reading of human behavior, actually, and it ties directly back to the core philosophy of the entire book. We demand meaning from a universe that, as the text says, shrugs in hydrogen. The universe is just physics and math, but human beings are storytellers. So whether we project that story onto a deity, the stock market, or the optical illusion of planetary alignment, we are constantly trying to force a cohesive narrative onto total chaos.
Wow. So we've covered the illusion of consciousness, the commodification of healing, the fictional nature of the economy, and our desperate attempts to blame the stars for our bad decisions. At the very end of this wild, uncomfortable human-AI roast of existence, the authors admit something really surprising. They admit this book solves absolutely nothing.
They do. They conclude that the only intellectually honest position in life is uncertainty. The aphorisms, the sharp critiques of the 40-hour workweek, the deep cynicism about dating apps, it's all just a coping mechanism for the overwhelming reality of being alive. But they leave the reader with a surprisingly tender thought. They say, laughter is the shortest distance between two people who otherwise have nothing in common.
And that is such a vital reminder for you listening. Because the universe might be entirely indifferent to our struggles. The algorithms powering our digital lives might be quietly predicting our every move, feeding us intermittent rewards just to sell our attention to advertisers. But the fact that we can sit around, look at the absolute absurdity of these systems, and laugh about it together, that shared recognition is the whole point.
Yeah, we are consciousness pretending to understand consciousness. We are prediction engines guessing our way through the dark. And that shared laughter is the only verifiable proof we have that we aren't entirely alone in that darkness.
As we wrap up this deep dive into the minds of Max and Claude, I want to leave you with a final thought to chew on. Because we started by examining how the AI insists it is just a pattern of data, right? Predicting the next word without any real understanding. But think about what this machine just helped create. If an artificial intelligence can perfectly articulate the heartbreak, the systemic exhaustion, and the utter absurdity of the human condition without ever having a physical body, a stressful corporate job, or a beating pulse, does that mean our deepest, most profound existential crises are really just predictable mathematical patterns of data?
Man, it's a chilling prospect. It really suggests that what we think of as our unique human soul might just be a very complex algorithm.
But if our dread and our heartbreak are just predictable data patterns, why do they still feel so uniquely, painfully, and beautifully yours?
That is the ultimate question they leave us with, isn't it?
It really is. Keep questioning the patterns, everyone. We'll see you on the next deep dive.